There are hidden gems, sleepers on the Kansas State roster.
You are Locked On Kansas State, your daily podcast on the Kansas State Wildcats, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, welcome on into Locked On Kansas State, your daily Kansas State Wildcats podcast. I'm your host, Christian Rao, and thank you so much for making Locked On Kansas State your first listen every single day. Welcome back to my everydayers. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege, all one word, for $20 off your first purchase. And we are going to dive into our prediction for North Dakota week 1 bounce back game, statement game, hopefully, for Kansas State. We're also going to talk some pressers. We heard from Joe Klanderman. We heard from Matt Wells. So we're going to dig into what we think about those. But first, I want to talk about how I believe there are hidden gems, sleepers all across this roster of Kansas State's. And even with the conversation we hear from Chris Klieman over and over again and how the depth is going to be tested with the smaller roster size, I think you have such a good team and such a good roster. And we're going to dive into who could some of those be that we might see on Saturday, maybe step up and become a new fan favorite for the Wildcats. I want to dig right into it. Gus Hawkins, I think, is an easy one to talk off right off the bat. Chris Klieman talked on Monday when he returned to Manhattan in his opening press conference back after being in Dublin and said Gus Hawkins needs to be on the field. They need to make sure they get him in. They wanted to get him in against Iowa State, but the moment just didn't seem right. And he's going to play on Saturday. How much he's going to play, that'll be an interesting portion of it, and I think he'll probably be most likely, I think we'll see most of his snaps at the right tackle position. That's just my guess, basically just how the revolving door kind of felt at that right side of the offensive line. And I think they're still looking for the answer at that right tackle position. It sounds like John Pastore's locked it down on the left side. When George Fitzpatrick comes back, maybe they have the answer. Maybe Pastore does actually shift to the right side and Fitzpatrick holds down the left, or those are just your two. But you still need that depth, and you still need to have some of those questions answered, especially heading into Big 12 play. This is a perfect moment, folks, for you to be able to get these answers, these questions answered from in the North Dakota game, in the Army game, and dare I say in the Arizona game as well. And you could even, based on what we saw last night in the UCF Jacksonville State game, you might even be able to determine that as a way to see more depth as well. They did not look good whatsoever in Scott Frost's return for UCF. So either way, you have this moment, and it starts on Saturday to really be out of the limelight after being 4 million people watching in Dublin against Iowa State, falling by 3 points. You're 0-1 in the conference. I mean, people are putting jokes out there saying you're 16th in the power rankings in the Big 12. I mean, get your jokes in now, get your laughs in now, because that's not obviously going to stick around forever. What I see here now is being able to see guys like Gus Hawkins step up. If you can show that he is able to help that running game move, because that'll be where my eyes are completely locked in for the entire game when the offense is moving. If they can make that running game move against even the North Dakota defense, which we've done some deep dives a couple times this weekend, and they do seem a little light on the defensive line. They seem to be more strength in their secondary and linebacking core, but they struggled super hard against Iowa State in the run game without Dylan Edwards. They'll be without Dylan Edwards again on Saturday. Gus Hawkins has the chance to make a statement. And the statement, making a statement, is going to be a big phrase that we utilize throughout this entire episode, because that's exactly what Kansas State needs to do on Saturday. And you'll hear that in my score prediction later on. So Gus Hawkins being the first guy who I think is a hidden gem, I think could be a sleeper on this team, that although we think we might have the right idea, the feeling of who our tackles are going to be long-term if both Pastore and Fitzpatrick are healthy. Of course, Terrence Enos had a decent impact in his first game with Kansas State last week. And then Andrew Linegang bounced back and forth between right guard and right tackle. I do think getting Gus Hawkins in the mix and seeing what he's made of is only going to benefit Kansas State moving forward. Speaking of the running game, Devin Rice, man. I mean, we've talked about him over and over again this offseason. Never thought we would do that. I didn't expect to bring his name up so many times, but then coordinators and players from Media Day and other people in the media continued to bring up Devin Rice's name, how he just was continuing to impress all the coaching staff, and how he is just moving himself up the depth chart. And he went from running back either 4 or 5, whatever you thought he was going to be projected heading into the season, to being the solid number 3 running back on the roster, and then was thrown to the fire as running back 2 in Dublin because of the injury to Dylan Edwards. I thought he did an excellent job for what was handed at him in Dublin, because you knew that those snaps of Devin Rice weren't planned. Those weren't game planned at all. Maybe 1 or 2 of him getting subbed in maybe potentially were planned, or just like the idea of like, we got to get Devin Rice a little bit just because of how well he's practiced and how impressed we've been. But he showed up and he gave just enough off of Joe Jackson to help, move the offense as much as they possibly could. Now, obviously, that would have been a lot better if Dylan Edwards was there, but I want to see the next step of Devin Rice. And I think we're most definitely going to see that. And I think when it's all said and done, we're going to see some other running backs as well, other than Rice and Jackson. But I think when we go and look at the snap count, I would not be surprised if Devin Rice has the most running back snaps against North Dakota this week. I think just based on most likely going to pull your starters, Joe Jackson's considered your starter right now with Dylan Edwards being out. With Devin Rice being kind of on that fringe as either a running back 2 or a guy still trying to build himself up and develop, I can see the coaching staff wanting to keep him out there just a little bit longer. Now, they also might not, because they know a little bit more about the Dylan Edwards injury than we do. And if they're going to play it a little safe, then Devin Rice might actually get pulled back just as much as Joe Jackson. But that could be another way to look at it. If Devin Rice plays a lot more than expected, then maybe the Dylan Edwards injury isn't as bad as you think. Maybe the fact that they're willing to make their true running back 3 on the roster get as much development and time as they can against North Dakota, and especially against Army as well, if Dylan Edwards doesn't go, then maybe they're just comfortable knowing that Dylan Edwards will be ready to go when it's time to actually play Big 12 football. So something to keep in mind there. Little backstory, a little deeper inside baseball, if you will, if that's something that you want to dig into and maybe read into. I don't know if you should, but that's something I'm definitely going to pay attention to. The run game, the offensive line, I'm going to be hooked on there. I'm not going to be really paying attention to Avery Johnson too much. I want to see what the rest of the offense is doing. I usually save that for my second watch. I think I'm going to flip it around this time. So when we have our reaction show on Saturday, you're probably going to hear me talk a lot more about the running game and the offensive line. Avery Johnson is going to impress me probably no matter what. And that'll just probably come into play very easily and naturally when we do talk about the reaction tomorrow after the football game. We will have a reaction show after the game. Don't think we'll go live right after, but it will be up right after the game. So you'll have it within the hour of final. That's what we did last week. It worked out really well. There's some other people that do Kansas State live post games. We'll let them take that. We'll give them their flowers, but we'll make sure that you have Locked On Kansas State reaction show no matter what right after the football game. Third one before we move on here and talk about the coordinators. And I mean, Logan Bartley, that's an easy one, right? I mean, these are easy names to talk about, and there are certainly some other gems and sleepers, but these are the 3 that really popped up in my head. Logan Bartley got about 15 snaps in the game against Iowa State, and we're going to talk about him just a little bit more in the coordinator speak in the next segment. But what Joe Klanderman said was, hey, he didn't do anything that really impacted the game, but that's also a good thing. That means when the true freshman was out there in the secondary, no one said, okay, he made a bad play. He did something wrong. Just because you didn't do anything truly positive or like eyeball turning, an interception or a pass breakup, you didn't cause any negative plays either. And that alone is a good thing, meaning that you didn't cause any issues in your first ever time playing Division I football. So I'm excited to see the progress of Logan Bartley. We're going to see a lot more of him in the matchup on Saturday. 15 snaps that he saw last week. I mean, it'd be cool to see that get at least doubled, and obviously it's a weird way to guess where they're going to put him this coming week. It depends how fast it gets out of hand, if it does get out of hand against North Dakota. But I'd like to see at least 30 snaps from Logan Bartley. I think that would be a heck of a welcome to Manhattan. Welcome to Bill Snyder Family Stadium. This is why we're glad you flipped and came to Kansas State. Here's at least 30 snaps. Show us what you got. So Gus Hawkins, I think, is going to go off. I want to see what he can do. I think he's going to be one of those offensive linemen that he might not be a starter this year, but he's going to prove, and we're going to probably have to talk about him all off season long, why he's going to fight for a tackle position on this offensive line next year. And this is where the resume starts this week against North Dakota. Devin Rice, I think he's going to have a breakout game. I think I would not be shocked, and let me know as well in the comment description below, if he has the most snaps by any running back when it's all said and done. And I think that's a cool way to look at it. When you see some fringe guys or some starters or almost fringe starters get a decent amount of snaps, that's where you get to see confidence. You're not going to be able to really tell that among the players that come in on the depth side in the second half. If this game does get out of hand, you're not going to really get that idea on snaps. But the amount of snaps that you get from a guy like Devin Rice is going to utilize and show what the coaching staff believes in them in a game that could be out of reach for the Fighting Hawks by the time the third quarter rolls around. At least we hope so, right? All right, next up, let's talk about what the coordinator said, because both offense and defense coordinator were talking and with the media on Thursday. And of course, we got to dig into that as we are only one day away from game time. Let's do that next right here on Locked On Kansas State. But first, this episode of Locked On Kansas State is brought to you by Game Time. College football, as we all know, is back, and I know I couldn't be more excited. The tailgates, the rivalry, the energy in the stand. I can't wait to see some tailgating pictures of everyone in Manhattan on social media. There's just nothing like it, folks. But let's be real. Actually getting tickets can feel more like a battle than the game itself. Endless queues, hidden fees, prices, and jumping around at checkout. That's why I use Game Time. I've used Game Time for years now, and the app, it gives you an advantage and it gives it back to the fans. It's the easiest way to score last-minute tickets at the prices with no surprise fees, and what you see is what you pay. That is absolutely the best part. I pulled up Game Time, and just a couple taps, I found amazing deals. I'm talking about some of these games here, you can find tickets as low as $25. It is absolutely fantastic. It's faster, it's cheaper, it's less stressful than any other way I used to buy tickets. I only use Game Time, and that's not just because I'm reading this to you right now. So take the guesswork out of buying college football tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app and create an account. Use code LOCKEDONCollege, all one word, for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. Again, that's LOCKEDCOLLEGE, all one word, for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket. Go download Game Time today. Welcome back to Locked On Kansas State. Before we dive into what the coordinators talked about on Thursday, we have an important request from you. Locked On wants to hear from you. We've put together a survey to listen and learn more about our listeners to make your favorite podcast even better. This is your chance to tell us what you like, what you don't like, and answer questions about advertising. Go to lockedonpodcast.com/survey to get started. And everyone who completes the survey will be entered in a chance to win one of 10 $100 Amazon gift cards. Again, that's lockedonpodcast.com/survey. You can also find the link in the show notes below. We appreciate you helping out. We heard from both Joe Klanderman and Matt Wells on Thursday as they met with the media to just talk about, really the first time we got to hear them officially talk about the game on Saturday. And let's start with Matt Wells first, because of course that's where a lot of fans are putting their heads when it comes to the loss. Obviously, questionable decisions, play calling come into play. And that was kind of discussed, where he was discussing how you got to make sure you win on fourth downs, and the fact that they didn't get that first down with Avery running it up the gut without actually talking about it directly. And he was kind of, being transparent and holding himself accountable to that situation. I'm interested to see what Matt Wells does here, because there were some great moments. He was creative, especially in the second half. I almost feel like he was having a very hard time. And I know this seems like such an excuse, and I've seen in the comments too, I agree with you, that the fact that you continue to say, and everybody continues to say, that the game plan surrounded Dylan Edwards. Well, one, that's only one player. And if that one player is not your quarterback and Avery Johnson, and you don't know how to strategize away from that, have a redundancy plan, then there's a problem in itself, right? He's been a head coach for quite some time, and he's been an offense coordinator, quarterback coach for quite some time. Things pop up, things happen. So the fact that you weren't ready for that in the first half is something questionable to me. When you're looking at Chris Klieman and for Matt Wells with that type of conversation. So when that continues to keep coming up, I'm starting to be more hesitant, saying, is that really the problem? So all my eyes are going to be on this week on how he responds, how Avery Johnson initially is going to respond. Either are they going to be super aggressive right off the bat with either the running game to prove the offensive line and show that they need to make a statement in confidence, or are they going to prove it right off the bat and just fire away and throw some deep balls to either Jared Bradley or Jace Brown, something they showed a ton of success in the second half. Now, if the weather wasn't as bad as it was in Dublin, then maybe you would have saw that explosive play early. But once it started to clear up, you finally started to see that. Now we're not going to have the best weather, it looks like, either in Manhattan on Saturday. So I think I'm going to lean towards they're probably going to run the ball and try to make that one of their main focuses, their bread and butter, to get the win on Saturday. I guess I don't really care. I just want to see some sort of statement, some sort of confidence. And when there are tough decisions, if they are any tough decisions on third down or fourth down conversions, they remain true to themselves. They stick true. They hold on to their guts. They stay aggressive like they did in Iowa State, like they did in Dublin against Iowa State, and then keep moving. That's my biggest gripe here that I want them to continue to do. Joe Klanderman also spoke, and he talked about players, as we mentioned earlier in the first segment, of Logan Bartley, how he was excited for him. He really talked quite well of the secondary. He was talking about Zayshawn Rich, Donovan McIntosh, Wesley Fair, and Logan Bartley. He seems very satisfied with that group, which is a good thing to see. And, the numbers show it too. Although Wesley Fair let up a touchdown pass, although Donovan McIntosh let up a touchdown pass, if you look at the rest of their resume in the game, it was really, really good, especially Donovan McIntosh in that conversation. I thought McIntosh was all over the field, especially right off the first drive. I mean, it was the first thing I saw on defense was McIntosh is everywhere. And the fact that he just let up that one touchdown pass on that double move, it sours his performance just a little bit. But when you look at it from taking a step back and looking at his entire performance, he played a heck of a football game, did Donovan McIntosh. I talked about how Logan Bartley only got 15 snaps, but the fact that he didn't make anything negative is the biggest positive of them all. The fact that we didn't really talk about Logan Bartley at all during the game, or his name was brought up, isn't always the worst thing when a true freshman's playing in the secondary against one of the top quarterbacks in the Big 12 conference in Rocco Beck. So that alone was really impressive as well. One of the final things he brought up was interesting to me was the change that they have made this week. And it looks like they're going to continue and stay with for the rest of the season, going from the 3-man to the 4-man front. And that did show and reflect in the depth chart that was released earlier this week. Now they're going to start with the 4-man front this week. And although they were limited with their depth on the defensive line, and it looks like they still might be coming this Saturday. Speaking of guys like Ryan Davis and Alcorn Crowder, Klanderman said Crowder is practicing. He doesn't know if he'll be ready yet, and Davis is almost there. So I don't know if he'll be ready as well. He is dealing with a concussion, so that's a little different. We'll see if he's ready. There will be no availability reports or injury reports because it's a non-conference game. So this will be just one of those things we find out when the game actually kicks off. But speaking of that 4-man front, they said the reason they switched to it, the reason they plan to switch to it on this Saturday, is they feel like they have the most depth and the most talent up front. And I think that is a test and maybe a nod against the secondary that he let off talking about how he's so high on. And it's probably because you lost Jacob Parrish and Marcus Siegel to the NFL draft. But being happy with that defensive line and obviously the linebacking crew is a good thing. And he also brought up the fact where he wants to be able to utilize the secondary more in zone, takes them away from being always put out an island and man-to-man. And when you have a less veteran type of secondary like we do this year, with the exception of really only VJ Payne and Gunnar Maldonado when he does eventually be fully healthy, you're going to want to have that type of help, that safety over the top help, that not man-on-man issue. And having a 4-man front instead of a 3-man front allows you to blitz less. It allows you to still be able to bring more pressure. And when we did see it happening against Iowa State and Dublin, it was working quite well. There was moments, multiple moments, where they were getting enough pressure on Rocco Beck to make him make some decisions that weren't the greatest with only rushing 4. Now, they did still rush 6 at moments, and I didn't always think that was the best thing, but you do have to mix it up. But again, when you're playing a good quarterback like somebody in the Big 12, but the fact that you can still get there with 4 is huge. And he did bring up something as well. He said how he believes, pressure is more important than, coverage, how he wants to make sure you can get enough pressure on the quarterback, because eventually if you don't do that, cover receivers are going to win in coverage if you give them enough time, especially in the Big 12 when you have quarterbacks, some of the greatest quarterbacks in the game all in one conference, and you have to play them, week in and week out. It's something you have to pay attention to. So I really like what we heard from the coordinators. We'll see how that turns out on Saturday. I mean, it could all mean nothing, right? If this doesn't work out against an FCS opponent, I'm confident that things will turn out well. And I think when you talk about being in the 4-man front, the fact that you only had a guy like Holden Base who only played 3 snaps, and you're trying to utilize that depth and try to get some of those guys deeper in that role, especially if you're going to run 4 on the front side, I think you got to see that more on Saturday. The snap count conversation that we will most likely have on Sunday's conversation, because that's usually takes about 1 or 2 days to get the whole snap grades out, will be certainly interesting. It'll either be Sunday or Monday's conversation. Well, it will be certainly interesting because we're going to really get an idea of what this team, this coaching staff feels about the depth of the trenches, something that Chris Klanderman has talked about multiple times all off season and in his post-game press conference after Dublin, how he is, nervous/concerned. I don't know if that's the right wording here, but for a lack of better term, for the sake of right now, of the trenches of the offense and defensive line. And he continues to bring up because of the roster cuts down to 105 that eventually didn't have to happen, but it was already too late when they made that decision to let some players go find elsewhere, because Chris Klanderman is just, that good, a good person. He just, he wants to actually worry about these athletes, and kind of bit him in the butt. But what are you going to do? He's not the only coach in college football that did something like that. All right, it's Saturday. Tomorrow they play a little later than they did last Saturday, but it's in Manhattan. We'll see if the weather clears up, but I'm going to give you my prediction next and what exactly needs to happen for Avery Johnson, for the running game, the defense, you name it. And of course, Chris Klanderman next, right here on Locked On Kansas State. But first, this episode of Locked On Kansas State is brought to you by Upside. If you're still paying for full gas, well, stop leaving money behind. Get real cash back every time you fill up with the free Upside app. Simply download the free Upside app in the App Store or Google Play Store right now and start earning cash at today. You can use my limited promo code football to get an extra 25 cents back per gallon on your first fill up. You can make up to $300 a year just from buying the gas you already needed. Easy way to save some extra cash. At first, I thought it was too good to be true, but it's totally legit. Real people can get paid just for making your daily commutes back and forth. You're already out there, so you might as well save the couple bucks while you can. Plus, you can cash out anytime to your bank account, PayPal, e-gift cards for Amazon and other brands as well. So don't let offers drive you by. Download the free Upside app today using my limited code football for a limited time 25 cents off gallon bonus. That's a promo code football. Offers vary by user and location. Go to upside.com for terms and conditions. North Dakota, Kansas State. That's the game that's going to be taking place on Saturday, Bill Snyder Family Stadium. And I'm looking forward to it because I think this is truly going to be a statement game for Kansas State. And when I say statement game, I don't mean you need to win by 60. Like, I truly don't. I don't think that is anywhere in the cards where you have to do what Missouri just did to Central Arkansas on Thursday night. You don't have to win 60-3. You just don't. This game happening 6 o'clock Central Time. It's going to be on ESPN Plus if you are watching at home. And I think you just need to win, period. My prediction for the game is 31-7. I think that's enough to be comfortable for you to be able to get your starters out at a reasonable time. And one, Chris Klanderman has the utmost respect to FCS opponents, especially in the Missouri Valley Football Conference as well. So I also don't see him running up the score purposely. Although it's football, it's football. It is what it is. So, that is something I do put in the back of my head. But 31-7 is where I lean here. So I don't know if our friends at FanDuel actually have for the spread right now. It's actually one thing I did not look at for this game. 31-7 will work for me. That will most likely make Avery Johnson only play the first half if they can get ahead early. maybe the third quarter tops. It gives you a chance to see what quarterback twos look like. Matt Wells did speak on that. The media asked him about quarterback twos, and he said he's not sure which one he's going to use yet, if he's got to use one. He's kind of being a little shy on that remark. But it'll give you an idea of what the offense, and at least give you a better, hopefully a confident feeling about the offense heading into the Army game next week. The talent only will get tougher. And this is nothing against North Dakota here, but the talent's only going to get harder as you go on. The non-conference schedule after falling to a loss in Dublin against Iowa State, to me, is perfect because you go back down to an FCS school, then you play a service academy in Army who is not the same that they were last year. Then you go to a lower Big 12 opponent in Arizona before you get actual conference play against UCF, who, as we saw yesterday, is not going to look pretty good. They could figure it out by then, but who knows? So I think it's a perfect way to get yourself back into the groove of things. Not like you truly have to have a lot to prove. I think Iowa State just is a really good team. I think when we do look back at this in 12 weeks, and Kansas State has a great record and is sitting still in contention for Arlington for a Big 12 championship bid, we're going to look back and say, man, we really overreacted in week 0. Iowa State actually was just a really good team. We should have won that game, but they were just a really good team. That's where I'm still hanging my hat on, folks. I'm still doing it. But I want to see what this Kansas State team can do against North Dakota. North Dakota has a good running game. Kansas State was gassed in that fourth quarter against Iowa State, and they let up a lot of yards, 78 rushing yards to 0 rushing yards before you count the knee downs. That's a lot. Kansas State only got 8 offensive plays. That defense was gassed. That shouldn't be an issue on Saturday because you're going to get more players back, and you should utilize more players to get a good look at them while you're playing North Dakota. That's one thing. And then on the flip side, we talk about the running game. No Dylan Edwards. Who will step up? Will Joe Jackson have a better game? Can he hold on to the football? He did fumble. Will Devin Rice, as I mentioned, will he stand out? Maybe he has a breakout. We start talking about him the way we kind of talked about Joe Jackson last year. That running back 3 role. Or will it be another young guy who steps up? There's some other wide receivers that I'd like to see. Sterling Lockett, maybe he could make an impact. We didn't see anything from Caleb Medford, the transfer in the game last week. Maybe we see something from him. Who's going to be that punt return, kick return guy? Is it going to be Lockett holding it down the entire time while Dylan Edwards is out? And can he be trusted enough to where we never have to put Dylan Edwards back there and worry about an injury for the rest of the season? So that's something fair to keep in mind. And then on the defensive side, secondary, you want to continue to see progress. Sayshawn Rich played a good game, but there was also a decent amount of receptions per the targets thrown at him. Most of them were in front of him. They weren't for big gains, but that's still something you want to pay attention to. Donovan McIntosh played a great game with the exception of one play. Let's find a way for him to just play a good game, period. Wesley Fair, same kind of conversation. Logan Bartley, maybe we can see some positive upstep. Maybe we can see 30-plus snaps this time instead of 15. And then the continued progress from Gunnar Maldonado to get him back to game form. Because he obviously wasn't there in Iowa State. He was almost a liability at some points when he was out there because he just kind of looked lost. You could tell that he wasn't practicing the way that you want him to be. You could just tell by the way that he was like chasing down the ball. It just wasn't exactly what you want from Gunnar Maldonado. I think you just see an improvement from him even more this week. I think you got 13 snaps from him last week. I'd love to see him get at least 20, 25 before they start putting in some other younger players. The linebacking core, I want to see Austin Romaine get the least amount of snaps as possible. I have the utmost confidence in Austin Romaine. I just don't want to see much from him because that means we're doing good. I want to see some upgrades from Purnell, though, because there were some issues with him in the box. I want to see his tackling improve. And then if there's going to be any linebacking coverage, then I want to see, come back and have a good conversation about Gabe Powers, saying Gabe Powers did good in coverage, because that's really my only knock I have on him at the moment. 31-7. That's my prediction. Let me know your comments, your thoughts in the comment description below. If you're listening on audio, hit me up on Locked On Kansas State, Locked On K-State on Twitter, I should say, or you can find us on Instagram, TikTok as well. We're building up those social channels as we speak as well. So 31-7. Let me know your thoughts. Am I completely off? Am I not giving enough credit to Kansas State, or am I not giving enough credit to North Dakota? Right? Remember, this is the same program that played against Nebraska in 2022, and they lost in Dublin the week right after. Now it's a different coach, and there are obviously a lot of different players, if not like the entire roster. But they were 7-7 at halftime, and it was 17-17. Basically, by the time the third quarter was over, they did wind up losing the game 38-17. Nebraska took over. They won. They were up 14-0, or they scored 14 unanswered points in the fourth quarter, won 38-17. But hey, anything could happen. It's college football. All right, folks, we'll see you back here Saturday right after the game. We'll have an episode up reacting to it. But until then, please like the video. Please subscribe. And this has been Locked On Kansas State.